The best coverage of the top stories in sports. The Sports Wrap with Jason Page starts now.
Thank you, Chad Erickson, and thank you for being with us on this Tuesday edition of the show. A lot to get to over the next 60 minutes. A couple of old war horses will drop by the show. I don't know if they'd appreciate me calling them that. I'll have to ask them. Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com will hang out with us. Talk about the flop that was the All-Star game. Also get into it with our man Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com. Does a great job on the NHL. Get his thoughts as we'll get a USA-Canada rematch on Thursday night. Could it actually do a bigger number than it did on Saturday night? I'm not so sure. I'll be curious to get his thoughts on that. But a lot to get into during the show. Sam Yarnell is here hanging out with us, as he always is. And Sam, I wanted to start things out in baseball because there were a couple items that I found of interest as we begin the program today. And the first one is this Rafael Devers, Alex Bregman issue. And it's not an issue between the two of them per se, because the Red Sox went out and bettered their team. They signed Alex Bregman to a 3-year, $120 million contract. There's only one problem. He plays third base. And that's something that Rafael Devers is not thrilled about because Rafael Devers plays third base. And Devers came out yesterday and basically said, Sam, hey, no, I'm not moving from third base. How about designated hitter? No, I'm not moving from third base. How about no, I'm not moving from third base? And at first blush, I'm saying, man, you're being selfish. You wanted the team. He cried last year how the team needed to go get more talent. All right, they go and get Bregman. And now he's unwilling or entrenched and not wanting to move from third base. But at the same time, you know, he's worked hard to better himself at that position. He was not a good defensive third baseman when he came into the league. I think the Red Sox are a better team if Alex Bregman is playing third base. But at the same time, then where are you putting Rafael Devers?
Yeah, well, you're going to have to put Rafael Devers somewhere else. And quite frankly, this is a realization that I think Boston came to a long time ago. And perhaps you got kind of insight into this yesterday with the whole Alex Cora interview and him saying, you know, Heim's in St. Louis now, obviously referring to Chaim Bloom, the former general manager there in Boston, who's moved on, who clearly promised Rafael Devers that he could play third base. And I don't know, maybe this is part of why the Red Sox moved on from Chaim Bloom, but Rafael Devers has never been a good defensive third baseman. Led the league in, or I should say tied for the league lead in errors last year, which is a position he's all too comfortable being in, considering he has led the league in errors in, let's see, just by a quick count, all but one of the seasons that he's played defensively at third base.
And he actually is better. And he actually is better than he used to be. That's the scary
100%.
Part. Yeah.
Like the crazy thing is he's still leading the league in errors, and he cut his error number in half from 6 years ago, which is absurd. But again, never been a premium defender, never been a plus defender, kind of always been a minus defender at third. The writing's always been there on the wall. He'll have to move to first base. He'll have to move to DH. Listen, there's a lot of history with the Red Sox in playing the DH position. I don't think there's any reason he should be ashamed of it. I don't know why he's going full NBA player and creating drama in the locker room where there doesn't need to be any. Baseball players are known for doing what's best for the team, very much so like hockey players. And Rafael Devers needs to do that right now and realize that he's got a platinum glove caliber defender replacing him at third.
Yeah, I wonder if it goes nuclear. Like, would he ask for a trade? Would he ask out? Would he ask, or is he just trying to play this as hard as he can to convince Cora and that team to let him play third? I mean, some people have suggested there could be a split in the time. Maybe Bregman plays a little second, they throw Devers a bone, he could play third once in a while. But if you're not out there every day, what's the point? I don't know. I think it's a thorny situation for that team as they sort of move through the spring. I don't want to belabor this too long because I got to get to Vlad Guerrero. The Blue Jays have had all sorts of issues here in free agency, Sam. Trying to keep, not just trying to keep guys, but trying to lure players in. Now they're having trouble keeping one of their own because they're not offering them enough money. Now, I haven't seen any figures on what they've offered versus what he wants, but he says they're really not even close yet. he, basically set a deadline of last night. They called him at 10:30 p.m. The offer still wasn't close. He's looking to basically play it out. Here's the one thing I will say. Buy some Vladdy Guerrero stock, because in a contract year, he's going to go big this year, knowing what's out there in free agency.
Or knowing Vladdy Jr., he'll get injured and miss 100 games, and that number will tank, and he should have taken the deal last night. Now, listen, this is a confusing situation for me from both sides. From the Blue Jays side, we know it is common knowledge that the Blue Jays have one of the richest ownership groups in all of sports. Their ownership group owns the cellular network for most of Canada, right? There is a ton of money there. And I think Vlad Jr. is probably a little bit cognizant of that, just as you and I are, Jason Page. So I don't understand why the Blue Jays aren't giving him a ton of money. But on the Vlad Jr. side, he has to understand that he has a unique situation in Toronto where he is the face of that franchise. And not only that, he's a legacy face of that franchise. There's one other franchise that still exists where he could go and really have the same stature.
Montreal?
The Los Angeles Angels. Yeah, right. I'd love to have him on the Nats, right? That'd be really cool. Do I think it's plausible? Not really. The Angels are the place, and if he goes to the Angels, are they any more akin to winning than the Blue Jays? It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But again, from the Blue Jays perspective, Jason, it's exactly what you and I talked to David Ardsma about last week or something. The Blue Jays need to spend all the money in the world on Vlad Jr. because Vlad Jr. is the only reason people want to come play for the Blue Jays.
Or even come watch the Blue Jays for that matter. But look, you look at next year's offseason. Is there a bigger free agent prize out there than Vlad? He could be looking at that insane kind of money that we just saw Juan Soto get. If he has a big year in his walk year,
I'll say this, though. We're seeing a massive swing, especially in the last couple of weeks in these contracts, because now, he's slated to lead that free agent class. However, he's 2 opt-outs away from being third in line behind Pete Alonso and Alex Bregman.
It's a fair point.
It's the thing. It's weird. These guys are signing these short deals, Jason. It's like we've gone back to the prove it era in baseball.
I'll tell you where it's headed. If the Blue Jays stink, they're trading him.
Yeah.
He's getting dealt. At the deadline. He's gonna make a nice acquisition at the deadline for somebody. That's what I see. What do I know? What does Dennis Bernstein know? A lot about hockey. We'll talk to him about it next. Let's keep things moving on this Tuesday edition of Sports Wrap. Talk some basketball with Kurt Helin in 10 minutes, but right now, let's talk some hockey. 4 Nations. What a overwhelming success this event has been for the NHL. Our friend Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio, drops by the show to help us talk about it. It'll be USA and Canada in the finals on Thursday night for the 4 Nations Championship. And boy, what a grand slam of an event this has been for the NHL and for hockey as a whole. I got to ask you, though. I watched Saturday night. I was texting you because I was blown away watching USA and Canada. I was out with some friends, and I said, I got to sit down at the bar and watch this game. And I proceeded to sit there and watch the game. How does hockey, because I always wonder this, when you watch the success internationally, when you see these matchups, USA and Canada, USA and some of these other teams, how does the NHL capitalize on the success of this and carry that energy back into the regular season where people just kind of throw their hands up and go, all right, I'll see you in the playoffs?
Well, we're close to the playoffs, Jason, because the playoffs start in late April. So I just think that the casual fan is not going to tune in. Like, you can't tell me if you were a casual fan and watched the game that you wouldn't tune in Thursday. And if you live in a major city with the market, 32 markets for the NHL, that you might not now go to a game or watch a game or become a fan of that team. So I think that's how it's not, you're not going to go from 0 to 60 at the end of this. You're going to go from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 10 to 30. That's how you grow the game. It's as simple as that. It's why they went to Australia for an exhibition game. That's why they still do the Global Series. So I think it's a gradual awareness of the sport. It's not going to eclipse, baseball or anything like that at this point in time, but it's a gradual, like a kid who's 7 years old who watched that. And yeah, I guess the fighting may be a little bit over the top, but you're going to grow fans. I think they had 4.4 million viewers.
It's an eye-grabbing rating. That's an eye-grabbing number that they got on Saturday night, Dennis.
And Jay, you don't think they're going to do more on Thursday? Of course they are. And it's U.S. and Canada and Boston. And if you watched the game last night, Todd Angeli, who's the anthem singer, what an anthem he delivered. I can't imagine what he's going to deliver on Thursday night. So I think it's just a critical mass they hit. And again, this is something that hasn't happened in 9 years. And I had a great quote on social media. We waited 9 years for international play between these for NHL players, and in 9 seconds, it eclipsed the expectations.
Yeah.
So it was the perfect storm. It was amazing, and it was in the right city, Jason. If that was in Toronto, I think half the people would have still been in the Air Canada Club and not really cared about it. But in Montreal, with the passion of the fans, it was a high note for this league, and it's nothing anybody expected, Jason. I said, all right, the first fight, okay, no problem. The second fight, and then the third fight, are you kidding? It just captured everybody's imagination. And I joke, Jay, if you had an opportunity to watch the NBA three-point shooting contest or Four Nations, and you started watching the NBA and tuned over 15 seconds into the Four Nations, you missed everything.
Yeah.
So it was an incredible night for the NHL and for the NHLPA as well.
All right, tell me why Thursday night, and I know the USA squad is dealing with some injuries here that could impact this game. Tell me why Thursday night ends any differently than Saturday night.
Ends differently because of the injuries. Because Charlie McAvoy's now going to be out. The Bruins announced him out. Matthew Tkachuk and Brady Tkachuk, I don't think are going to be at 100%. And I think that opens the path for the Canada win. And remember, Canada, it was a one-goal game, Jason. So, and the U.S. won with defense, not with offense, with all the great stars on the team. And Austin Matthews sat out last night and was all banged up. So I just think there's too many injuries, too many guys maybe not playing at 100%. That could turn the time for Canada.
And I know you and I talked about it at the start of the season when we were talking about Helin, but you watch him out there. He made some big stops in that game.
Yeah, he did. Right now he's their best player. He's their best hope to win because he has been great. And the thing about, goalies are not unlike pitchers, great pitchers. Jay, if you don't get to him early, you're not getting to him late. And so Helin gave up goals in the first period of both games, and then he shut the door. He's going to win the Vezina, which, if fans don't know, that is awarded to the best goalie in the NHL every season. He's their path to victory, I think, at the point in time. So you're going to have to probably replicate the defensive effort in Montreal when they won basically a 2-1 game. It wound up being 3-1. But I think that's how it goes. So great call on Helin. He's probably going to have an MVP performance for them to get by Canada on Thursday.
Give me a sense for, the storyline that sort of captivates you the most as we go into the second half. I know we're already kind of late in the season, but as we go into the second portion of this NHL season, what is the storyline that has your attention the most?
The two best teams in the league are the Winnipeg Jets and the Washington Capitals. They are also two teams that have had minimal success in the playoffs. Can they stay at the top of the food chain? And, it's great that you win 82 games and you get 120 points, you have these sterling records, and then you get to the playoffs and the game's entirely changed, Jason. Like the pressure's on it. And Winnipeg, remember, Winnipeg had a great season last year. They had a streak, I think, of 33 games where they gave up 3 goals and less, and they played a very powerful offensive team in Colorado and lost in 5. So can that success that these teams have had be extended to game 83 and beyond? I think that's it, because they've had great seasons, but they haven't been there in a big spot in the playoffs, Jason. And, we both know the Stanley Cup playoffs are an entirely different.
Did we lose Dennis? We may have lost Dennis. Uh-oh. Frozen pizza! He looks good. He looks good that way, though. We'll see if we can get Dennis. We'll see if we can get Dennis back on the line here, because we may have just lost him for a second. I was going to ask him about the Rangers, too. I'm just going to keep him there. Maybe eventually he'll reappear. No? We lost Dennis. I don't think that's ever happened before. We lost Dennis. Oh, man. This is terrible. We've been able to reestablish contact with our friend Dennis Bernstein. Team at the back of the pack Potential wild card team, somebody we're not thinking about that could potentially make a run here as we get to the playoffs.
Well, I picked the Rangers to win the Stanley Cup, and I've had regrets since, I don't know, the 15th game of the season. They have enough talent to do some damage in the playoffs, and they could be really a difficult out if they get to, let's say, a wild card spot and they have to pay the Florida Panthers or Washington. I'll give you an example, Jason. If Washington plays the Rangers in the first round, and Shesterkin plays like Shesterkin can play, and Panarin plays great, and Chris Kreider wakes up and he scored a goal last night in Four Nations, you can have a situation on 1-8, and 8 can win, an 8 seed could beat the 1 seed. So I think that's what I look at with respect to a possibility. So again, the Rangers have been in the playoffs. They got to the conference final last year. Washington hasn't had any success, these group of players. So I think that would be something that a team with a lot of talent in the Rangers who have underachieved, they could make some noise in the postseason still.
Well, listen, it's going to be an electric atmosphere on Thursday night in Boston. I will certainly be watching. I know you will be, and we always appreciate it, my friend. Dennis Bernstein, thefourthperiod.com, SiriusXM NHL Radio. Enjoy Thursday night. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
Will do, Jay. Thanks for the time.
We're coming back. More to do. Kurt Helin talks basketball next. Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday edition of Sports Wrap. We did a little baseball. We did a little hockey. Now let's do some basketball. And our friend Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com is here, sporting his Jackie Robinson t-shirt today. The fashion connoisseur he is. Not Jackie Robinson. I mean Kurt is the fashion connoisseur. That's what I meant.
Jackie was probably far more fashionable than I was back in the day. So yes,
that's fair. You know me, Kurt. I love this league. I love this game. Isn't that one of their sayings? I love the NBA, but we need to have a come to Jesus moment here because what we had this weekend wasn't much better than what we had before. And I don't know. I said this yesterday on the show, and I want to posit a theory and get your thoughts on it because you probably didn't see what I said yesterday. But here's what I said. I don't think the culture around this league and the culture of NBA players and the Players League, and they basically run the show, I don't think it will ever allow for them to have an all-star game that's going to matter. You can bring in international things all you want. I just don't think it's going to make a difference. Are we looking at a scenario much like what football did with the Pro Bowl, where the NBA All-Star Game, other than, the contests and the dunk contest and the three-point shootout and all that stuff, is this thing going to go away?
Maybe eventually in the next few years. I don't think they're done trying. I work for NBC. We just paid a boatload of money for rights that includes the All-Star Game. Yeah. By the way, when you ask me this question next year, Jason, it's perfect. Everything's great. I'm telling you now. I was saying this on your show before. I've said it and written it before. I'm not sure what the fix is because I don't think there really is a fix anymore. I think it's look, we'll use the dunk contest as an example. Mac McClung steals, frankly, probably the highlight of the weekend, dunks over a car. Nobody else did that. You know why? Because if Stephon Castle could jump over a car and dunk if he wanted to. The Spurs would have flipped out. You can't do that. You're like our star player, man. We can't, there's just, they're going to go at this speed. This is what you get kind of thing. You can make it USA versus the world. You can do whatever. I don't know that you're going to do better than this year, which, by the way, was better than last year. I will grant that it was 10% better than last year. Now, the 33 to 35 minutes of basketball in a 2.5 hour show is another discussion, but that's, I think, is about as good as the basketball is probably going to get. And at Friday night, the system worked pretty well when those guys had something to play for, the rookies, because they were trying to get to Sunday. But at the end of the day, this is it. This is what you get. And you've got to find a way to either promote it or move on. Yeah, and move on, I think, is ultimately where this thing is going. And look, maybe you can make it more interesting and integrate the WNBA into it and sort of do some things that can,
a one-on-one competition or something like that, where pride is at stake and guys aren't going to want to get shown up on television. And I don't think they're going to joke around as much. Maybe it's a one-on-one sort of tournament.
I will tell you the two things that came up in San Francisco where I was for this. I was up there. I got the joy of it live, so I didn't. The two topics that came up were USA versus the world, because how well Four Nations has worked for the NHL this year. And that's not something they're going to do every year, but how well that worked for them had them thinking, with this work? But the the one-on-one contest, which Unrivaled did in basketball, the women played hard. It was actually a really great event. The league is wondering, if we put $1 million, it would probably take that much money as the prize pool, or for the winner. Would you get it? Would you get Giannis and Wemby and Kyrie Irving, who would probably win the thing, frankly? He's sneaky good at that with those handles. Would you be able to get the guys you need involved to make this work? And that's an interesting one. If you could get buy-in, it would be great, but it all comes back to, are you going to get buy-in, or does that turn into the dunk contest where nobody wants to embarrass themselves?
Is there anything that you could see in the offing in terms of the structure of this league as it is currently set, that could change the culture that is made it so that we really can't have the All-Star game that a lot of fans want? I want to get your thoughts on that. Kurt Helin's joining us. We'll get back to him in just a moment after a word from our friends over at Credit Associates. Are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt, in over your head trying to make monthly payments? There's a powerful debt relief program the credit card companies don't want you to know about. Overcome the debt trap. Multiple credit cards, high payments, high interest rates. It keeps you in debt for decades. One affordable low monthly payment? How does that sound? Credit Associates Debt Relief Program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months. That'll save you thousands of dollars and decades in debt. Find out how much you can save. Call 1-800-747-5362. That's 1-800-747-5362. Or just scan the QR code below. Your thoughts on what I just asked you?
Stephen Curry talked about this after the game and basically said, hey, it was better, and it was good for him. It was a good weekend to be Stephen Curry in the host and win MVP. But he essentially said, this isn't going to revert. It's not going to become, I don't think there's a way to, even for the fans, I think it's just different. Look, 30 years ago, all the stars in one place was huge. It was exciting. We didn't get to see them. We didn't get to stream them every night. Our access to them through social media was different. Or there wasn't social media access to them. So it was exciting in that sense to have everybody in one place, and then that energy kind of carried over that I just don't think it exists anymore. I don't think there's an answer. There's some magical trick to turning the clock back. This is what it is.
Yeah. I only have a minute here, and then we'll hold you over for the next segment. But that weird ceremony they did for the Inside the NBA guys, has anybody told? They're not retiring. They're not going away. They're not going fishing. They're just going to another channel. I didn't get that whole thing.
Well, and I'll tell you, if you wanted to hear what the players complained about after this event was that for those people who timed out, that was an 18-minute break when you threw in the commercials in the middle of the championship game that lasted 11 minutes of basketball time. Like, you can't do that. The whole night had a little over 30 minutes of basketball. It was too much non-basketball. Look, there's always going to be musical acts. It's always going to be a bit of a show, but this was a little over the top. Yeah,
I agree with you. Kurt Helin of Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com is hanging out with us on the show. Let's zoom forward. Let's fast forward ahead. Second half of the season, even though we're well past the second half. I got some questions to ask him. We'll get to those next on Sports Wrap. Continuing the NBA conversation with the All-Star break concluding, getting back into action. Our friend Kurt Helin, Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com, swings by the show. Hey, can I interest you in Hornets-Lakers? Little Hornets-Lakers there, Kurt, on Wednesday night? Apparently, there are going to be some awkward meetings there.
Yeah, it's the Mark Williams revenge game. Yeah, that's
weird.
That's gonna be a little weird.
That is really weird coming out of the All-Star break. That's the first game we get, and then the full slate of action on Thursday night. I want to run through real quick from east to west and start in the East, where despite the fact that they're 44-10 and tied for the best record in the league, I still can't get people to buy into the Cavaliers. I mean, 44-10 is enough of a sampling by now that people should kind of know what they are, but there are still some people that question whether or not this team has the chops to win a championship.
We do this with everybody. I mean, hey, Jalen Suggs cannot win a big game, Jason. And turns out he could. So we do a little of this, but I'm with you. They've got to prove they can beat a fully loaded Boston team that's healthy. And if Boston's right, I'm not sure they can, but I'm not sure Boston's going to be right either. They really haven't been all season. What Cleveland has is an elite defense. They've got hey man, who's their star? Who's going to step up? We've seen Donovan Mitchell step up in the playoffs. He is capable of this. They have good depth. They have good shooting. Evan Mobley hasn't done it on this stage, and he's going to have to prove he can, but I believe he's ready. I know they can defend. This is an elite defense. I think they're right there. Look, man, there's one of the cities I have a room booked in for the finals, just in case. I genuinely believe they're that good. They should be there. I'm not convinced they can, like I said, that they can beat a fully healthy, fully loaded, ready to go Boston, but I'm not sure we're going to see that team. And also, even if we do, that's a 6-7 game series that's going to be just insane.
Okay, wait a second. You mentioned cities you have hotels booked in. Where else do you have hotels booked? In the East.
Boston?
Yeah.
Oklahoma City.
Not New York? We're not booking New York? I mean, you always got to book New York early.
Defense. No, I'm not sold that look, I love the Knicks, and I still think they have a puncher's chance. There's like a 10-15% chance, but they'd have to find some defense they haven't found. I might add Denver to the list if they keep playing well.
The one caveat I'll throw in on the Knicks is Mitchell Robinson. They have not been fully healthy. And OG Anunoby was missing from that last game against the Celtics as well. You put those two guys in the mix, I think the defensive outlook for the Knicks changes a bit.
When I see it, I would love to be in New York. And I think, by the way, the energy of Madison Square Garden on a team that went like that would be so good for the league, so good. That's one of those places where the energy bleeds through the television into your or your streaming phone or whatever you're watching, like into the room, right? I would be thrilled to see it. I'm just not convinced they're there yet.
Other teams that could make a run in the East, Cavaliers, Celtics, Knicks, is that about it?
That's about it. I'm not sure that anybody else. The Bucks are out there, but they haven't been consistent enough this year. And I don't. Kyle Kuzma is a more mobile version of Chris Middleton, but I'm just not sure they have enough. When they've played well, though, I mean, they won the NBA Cup. When they've been focused, they have looked like a contender kind of team. But I'm not sure they've built the habits. I'm not sure they can do that consistently over a couple months to make the finals.
All right, move out to the West, where despite the fact that they're actually having a really nice season at 32-20, nobody really takes the Lakers seriously as a title contender. So we'll move past them for a second. Thunder and Grizzlies. The Nuggets have played better as of late. They've won 8 in a row. Jamal Murray's starting to heat up. What do you see in the West as the most danger for the Oklahoma City Thunder?
I think it's Denver if Murray's playing well. This is a team that has done it, does defend, has depth, and has the best player in the world. Has the answer. Look, Isaiah Hartenstein's there to add physicality and to match up with, to give them big bodies they can throw at Jokic and make him work. But he's still the best player in the world. And as we saw the other night, just before the break, when Jamal Murray is going at his peak, then that's the best two-man game in the league. That becomes very difficult to stop. So I think they have a chance. Memphis, and now I'm going to do what I just kind of razzed you for doing. I haven't done it on this stage, right? They haven't seen them do it through the playoffs at that level consistently. They're really good. They're really athletic, but they are not a great half-court team. They get a lot of their points with turnovers and steals and breaking out and using transition and all that athleticism. In the playoffs, at some point, you're going to have to do it in the half court. They're going to have to prove to me they can do it in the half court.
Does anyone want to play this version of the Warriors in the playoffs, especially some of those top seeds?
No. And by the way, you kind of blew past the Lakers. I put them in the same category. I think they're beatable. The Lakers, because they don't defend. I think the Warriors don't have as much depth. But Curry and playoff Jimmy, but I don't want that in the first round. With Draymond making some passes, and they're going to push you hard. I don't know that they have the depth. I don't know that their defense is consistent enough to do it, although it was over their little stretch at the end when Jimmy came back. Their defense has been where it needs to be. I'm not convinced. And by the way, they're going to have to come out of the play-in. They're the 10 seed now. They're not going to climb out of that far enough to avoid the play-in. But I don't want to, about the last thing I want to see if I'm Oklahoma City or Denver is the Warriors in the first round.
Yeah, I only got about 30 seconds here. We didn't mention the Clippers at all. Just kind of meandering in the middle there.
Look, that is a good team that Ty Lue has gotten as much out of as you can. And the scary question with them, what if they get fully healthy playoff Kawhi for 30 minutes a night? If they do that, then they're dangerous.
Kurt Helin, pro basketball talk at NBCSports.com. The NBA resumes on Wednesday night with that riveting Hornets Lakers matchup. What's going on with LeBron, by the way, in 10 seconds? Is he going to be back?
I would say just all the circumstantial evidence is he'll be back. By the way, no way he skips the All-Star game and doesn't get a send-off. That's a hint.
Good point. Kurt Helin, dropping nuggets. We'll see you later.
Take care.
Odds and Ends wraps it up in 10 minutes. But first, something to consider. Something to consider, Sam Yarnell. All these years later, we're hearing about Richie Incognito and Jonathan Martin again. Remember them? Martin played with the Dolphins when Incognito was there. There was accusations of bullying from Incognito towards Martin. There were voice messages played or voicemails played that certainly painted Richie Incognito in a very negative light. I will say, it wasn't as if his career ended after that. He did have, other stops after that. Played in Buffalo, if I'm not mistaken. Was that the only other stop he made? Was Buffalo?
He played in Buffalo before that. He played
Buffalo,
in Vegas after that, and there was another stop out west. I want to say San Francisco or the Chargers or somebody.
Yeah. So, it wasn't like his career ended after that.
No.
It certainly stained and tarnished his career. But there's a
lot
lot
for 3 more years.
Yeah,
it wasn't even like it was just 1 year while they sorted everything out.
And Jonathan Martin did not play much longer. And his life sort of spiraled out of control after that. Now there is a story that came out where Jonathan Martin, because ESPN, I think, revisited this, or somebody revisited this, and the story basically is that Jonathan Martin is saying, well, no, I wasn't really bullied. What? Huh? After everything we heard, after everything we were told, after the way the story was sold, salacious as it was, Jonathan Martin is saying, no, I really wasn't bullied. Now, I don't know how you match that up with those voicemails and the sort of things that we read about, but at the very least, it makes us revisit this conversation of what really took place, with that Dolphins team, and how is it all these years later we're just hearing about this?
Yeah, so this is interesting. Because the Jonathan Martin thing, who, first of all, congratulations to Jonathan Martin. As I understand it now, he's a very successful entrepreneur and investor and really making the most of everything and super successful in life. So good for him. The story goes like this, right? Apparently, Jonathan Martin was not dealing with the adjustment from college to pro football well. And he says now, all these years later, that he wanted to be removed from the team. And there was a perpetuation of a narrative from his mother, who I believe now that they've become estranged in their relationship. There was a narrative perpetuated by her that there was bullying going on within the locker room, which he's now saying there wasn't. Okay, great. Glad we're all chanting Kumbaya together and everyone's, posting pictures of each other partying out at clubs when we all played in the NFL. Great. That's awesome. There is a massive, something that's being written off by everybody in this entire story, and something that has gone on perpetually again and again and again in the years since, and seemingly no one has noticed it. And that is the utter and complete failure of the Miami Dolphins as employers to regard any sort of issue that comes across. And just because they're in the same division as the Jets, who are about twice the dumpster fire the Dolphins are, the Dolphins have been able to fly under the radar with this the whole year. And throw a little Dan Snyder in there for good measure. Being on the same coast in the same time zone, always good for that kind of thing. The massively underreported part of this story when it first broke in 2018 was a conglomerate of Richie Incognito, one of the Pouncey twins, and I don't remember which one it was. One of them was down playing for the Dolphins at the time, and I don't want to get them confused. And another player, I can't remember his first name, Jerry was his last name. They went on tirades of weird activity towards their teammates, but more importantly, there was actual bullying going on against an assistant trainer at the time, who I believe was of Asian American descent.
Yes.
They were outright racist towards this guy,
Yeah.
like unwittingly, with no end, and there was no repercussion for it ever. This is something that the Miami Dolphins continue and continue and continue to do. Look at what Brian Flores said after he left. That guy is now a very successful defensive coordinator in the NFL. The Miami Dolphins haven't won a playoff game in how many years? There is something seriously wrong with the Miami Dolphins, and I just hope that this story coming out the way that it has can let us revisit that 2018 team, look at the years since then, and understand the utter failure that is the Miami Dolphins, not as a football team, but as an organization and as an employer.
And look, I mean, I don't know how HR works in these sorts of situations. You know, HR is built for offices. It's built for organizations. It's built for front offices. I don't know how it's structured when it comes to players and player conduct and the hijinks that sometimes take place. But this was something far worse and far more sinister that was going on within this organization that wasn't addressed. By the way, Incognito played for the Bills before he played for the Dolphins, and he did play for them after for 2 years. Then he played with the Raiders.
Gosh.
Then he played with the Raiders. I thought he had played with them after, so I'm glad we got that in. Very interesting though, to see this story sort of revisited after all these years. And again, it doesn't clear the name of Richie Incognito, who had plenty of other things to his resume, if you will, not in a positive way. When it comes to some of the things that went on during his career. But I think you make a very good point, Sam, in terms of the dumpster fire, not to the Jets' degree, but to the dumpster fire that has been, the Miami Dolphins for all these years. And they have sort of skated. They've been able to sort of skate under the radar. You know, when we talk about some of the real failings of teams in the NFL, the Dolphins sort of coast under the radar. We got more to do. Odds and Ends wraps up this Tuesday edition of Sports Wrap. All right, just about time to put the wraps on this baby for a Tuesday. Don't forget, if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the Sports Wrap with Jason Page podcast, available on all your favorite podcasting platforms, including Spotify, where you can watch the show, Apple Podcasts, YouTube Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Odyssey, Amazon, anywhere you get your podcast. You get a podcast. Go and check it out. It's good fun. All right, without any further delay, time for some Odds and Ends, presented by our friends at Credit Associates. Look, are you $10,000 or more in credit card debt? Are you in over your head trying to make monthly payments? Well, there's a powerful debt relief program that the credit card companies don't want you to know about. Overcome the debt trap of multiple credit cards, high payments, and high interest rates that keep you in debt for decades with one affordable low monthly payment. Credit Associates Debt Relief Program can help you resolve your debt in as little as 24 to 36 months. That's going to save you thousands of dollars and decades in debt. Find out how much you can save right now. Call 1-800-747-5362. That's 1-800-747-5362, or just scan the QR code right there. Odds and Ends, Sam Yarnell. Joe Buck back in the booth to do baseball? Say it ain't so, Joe. I knew it. When they signed him and they said, oh, we're just going to have him do Monday Night Football, I'm sitting there going, there's no way. There's no way. Joe Buck's a baseball guy. He loves baseball. He loves to hear himself talk. What sport do you get to hear yourself talk more than Major League Baseball? You got plenty of time on your hands, even with all the changes that they've made. Joe Buck back to the booth. What's he going to do? Yankees? He's going to do opening day for ESPN? Is that what you got?
Yeah, Yankees Brewers, the marquee game on opening day. It should be a good one. I am excited. I will say this. I know that Joe Buck is a controversial figure in the media, a divisive figure even maybe. My own relatives will go as far as to say that they don't like Joe Buck. Some of them, others of them absolutely love him. Those are the ones from St. Louis, if you couldn't tell. Listen, I'm a Joe Buck guy. I grew up watching him call the World Series on Fox. I loved it. It felt like my childhood. He feels to me, and I know that, the people before me, Bob Costas and that kind of thing, Joe Buck is that for my generation. I truly do feel like he was on the call for so many influential moments in Major League Baseball history. My mind immediately goes to the David Freese home run, right? We will see you tomorrow night. Yeah, that was freaking awesome. Electric Factory. So I'm glad Joe Buck's back in the booth, and I'm sorry if that makes you upset.
Cam Ward is upset. He says anybody who passes over him, he's going to make you rue the day, Sam Yarnell. I don't know why he's so angry right now. He's slated to be the top pick. If you look at the odds, he's the only one at minus money right now at minus 140. Cam Ward is the number one pick in the draft, odds and ends.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing, isn't it? And I'll come out right here and say I disagree with you, Cam Ward. You will not make anyone pay this year because this is an incredibly weak quarterback class, and any team that drafts you is not looking to be competitive this season. You're no Jaden Daniels, buddy. I do think, though, that in my analysis of this first overall pick odds, because those are still the only odds that we're getting on FanDuel for the draft less than 2 months out, I think that it's so deep, this draft is, at so many positions, basically all of them besides starting quarterback, right? You look at running back, you got Genty, you got Hampton, you got Scadaboo, you got a ton of guys. Yeah. You look at the wide receiver, T-Mac, Luther Burden, guys everywhere, Tyler Warren, and the kid out of Bowling Green whose name is eluding me for the tight ends. There is depth everywhere, even in the lines, Jason Page, so I'm not confident in any quarterback out of this class.
Last but not least, an agent has come out and said Caitlin Clark could never get what she's really valued at by the WNBA. While I agree Caitlin Clark is valuable, and we don't have nearly enough time to flesh this out, but I'm going to say this. I think her value slowly starts to drop as you start to see this influx of new talent that's going to be coming into the WNBA, because she's just going to be one of several extremely talented players. Was she the one that helped jumpstart it with her leap from college and what she did at Iowa coming into the WNBA? Absolutely. But make no mistake about it, she's about to be one of several. She already is one of several stars in the league, but there's several more that are on the horizon for this league. So this idea that we cannot possibly comprehend the amount of money that Caitlin Clark is worth, right now, yes. Another 2 or 3 years, she's just going to be one of many stars in a league that's going to have plenty of them.
But the premise is interesting, though, because we know that salaries in the WNBA are notoriously low, right? Yeah, they're terrible. You're talking about, let's look right here at the highest paid WNBA player in terms of cap hit this year is Kelsey Mitchell for the Fever, Caitlin's teammate. You know what her cap hit is? $249,244. Like, come on. Caitlin Clark is worth a ton more than that. And yeah, it's sports, right? So the cap is going to go up, as it does across sports, as we've seen for 20 plus years. But here's the thing. The top 4 are making around $250. Then it's a fall off to $225. Caitlin, even if she's making an absurd amount, is like $350 a year? Yeah, Caitlin Clark's skill in women's basketball is worth a ton more than that.
No, I totally agree with that. I completely agree with that. I mean, we know that players in that league are being underpaid. Hopefully that's going to drastically increase now with the increases in attendance. By the way, is anybody watching Unrivaled? Because I haven't. I'm not watching. No? No, Sam? Deer in headlights? No? Yeah. I don't know if it's done wonders for women's basketball, but what do I know? Does it for us. Thanks to Dennis. Thanks to Kurt. Thanks to you for watching. We'll see you all back here tomorrow.